In this video, we're going to be going over the steps for finding angles of a right triangle. And anytime we have to find angles, we're always going to round to the nearest minute. So here are the steps that I want you to copy into your notes. Step 1 is to label the triangle. Label the triangle. So if you look at our first example, I'm going to label the hypotenuse, because that's always opposite the right angle. Here, the angle in the problem is x. Trigonometry is always about an angle. So here, the opposite is going to be 8.6, and the adjacent is going to be 9.9. So step 1 is to label the triangle. Step 2 is to identify the active sides. Identify the active sides. Here, the active sides are the opposite and the adjacent. Active sides are the sides for which you have information about. Step 3 is to use SOHCAHTOA to figure out which trig function you're using. So here, our active sides are opposite, so we have the O's, and adjacent, so we have the A's. The only trig function that we know both parts for is the tangent. Step 4 is to write out the rule. Well, what does that mean, write out the rule? I know the tangent of theta, the tangent of the angle, equals opposite over adjacent. So step 4 is to write out the rule. Step 5 is to substitute into the rule. Substitute into the rule. Substitute into the rule. So here we have the tangent of theta. Well, what's our angle? Here our angle is x because we're going to be solving for the angles. So the tangent of x equals the opposite, which we said was 8.6, over the adjacent, which is 9.9. The last step is going to be to push the buttons to get your right answer. Remember, when you're finding angles to the nearest minute, you have to go through this sequence of buttons. So I suggest you have them in your notes. You're going to press second, the trig function, the fraction, alpha y equals. You're going to close the parentheses, then second, apps, and DMS. So we're going to press second, and then our trig function. Well, here, the trig function is tangent because we had the opposite and adjacent. So you're going to press second and then tangent. One key to realize, anytime you're finding an angle, you want to see the -1, the inverse, next to your trig function. So second, tangent. Then we want to press alpha, the green button, and then y equals, so that we have our fraction template. We want to type in our fraction, which is 8.6 over 9.9. Then we want to close the parentheses. So move the cursor out from the denominator, press to the right, close the parentheses. Then we want to press second and then the apps button. When you press second apps, you bring up the angle menu, and we want to choose option 4, which is DMS, which stands for degrees, minutes, and seconds. Your calculator should now look like this. And then when you press enter, this is what should appear. The rule for rounding is as follows. We have degrees, minutes, and seconds. What you're going to do is you're going to look at the seconds. If the seconds are 30 or more, round the minutes up by 1. If the seconds are less than 30, you keep everything the same. Here the seconds are 49.5. So that's 30 or more. So we're going to round the minutes up by 1. So here our answer is 40 degrees, 59 minutes. Let's try this next one. Step 1 is to label the picture. So find your right angle. The side opposite is the hypotenuse. Remember, trigonometry is always about the angle. So in this case, the angle is y. So we go straight across from y. That's the opposite. And then that makes the 3.8 adjacent. So step 1 is to label the triangle. Step 2 is to identify the active sides. Here the active sides are the adjacent, which we know is 3.8, and the hypotenuse, which we know is 12.4. So now we're going to try to figure out whether this is going to be a sine question, a cosine question, or a tangent question by using SOHCAHTOA. Here the active sides are the adjacent, so I'll label the A's. The hypotenuse, so I'll label the H's. The only trig function that we have both parts for is cosine. So we're going to write out the rule. The cosine of theta equals adjacent over hypotenuse. We're going to substitute in cosine of theta. Theta is the angle, so in this case the angle is y, equals adjacent 3.8 over the hypotenuse 12.4. So now we're going to push buttons on our calculator. First we're going to press second and then cosine. Anytime you're finding an angle, you always press the second button first. Make sure you always see this -1, this inverse notation. Then we're going to go alpha y equals for our fraction template. We're going to enter the fraction that we set up. So in this case, 3.8 over 12.4. Now we want to close the parentheses. So move the cursor out from next to the 12.4 and then press close parentheses above the 9 button. Then seconds and apps. And option 4 for DMS, which stands for degrees, minutes, and seconds. Press enter, this is what your calculator should look like. 72 degrees, 9 minutes, 16.136 seconds. You now look at the seconds. If it's 30 or more, you round up. If it's less than 30, it stays the same. Here your seconds are 16, which means the minutes are going to stay the same. So your final answer is 72 degrees, 9 minutes. And that's how we find angles of right triangles.